In today's video, we're going to talk about my top 5 neighborhoods to live in Chesapeake, Virginia in 2024 coming up. Hey, my name is Sam Santalone and I'm a real estate agent in the Hampton Roads area that goes from Virginia Beach and through Williamsburg, and I do videos every week about living and moving to the area. So I love Chesapeake and I love the neighborhoods in Chesapeake, and I think it's one of the best cities to live in the Hampton Roads area. So this week I'm going to talk to you about my top 5 neighborhoods in Chesapeake in 2024, so that if you plan to move to Chesapeake and you want different price ranges, you'll find some of the best neighborhoods, my favorites for the year, so it can help you decide where to move when you come in 2024. So let's start with the number 5 neighborhood in Chesapeake for 2024 is Norova Estates, and I like Norova Estates a lot. I've talked about it in other videos, and as we talk about it, I'm going to first show you where it is. Chesapeake is a large city, and I've talked to you about how large it is in the past. It's like a big horseshoe underneath Norfolk and Virginia Beach. Well, as you zoom in, one of the most important parts of Chesapeake is Greenbrier, because it has lots of shopping. It's also accessible to major interstates and Virginia Beach and the rest of Hampton Roads pretty easily. There's Greenbrier East and West right here. Well, if you look at Greenbrier Parkway, which is the primary road right smack dab through the Greenbrier area, there's an area, the road that connects with that called Kempsville Road, which is right here. Well, just north of that, in this section right here, is this neighborhood called Norova Estates. And as you I'll drop a pin, you'll notice the type of neighborhood that it is. It is very relaxed. It has lots of nature, lots of trees, and some sidewalks, which sometimes can be uncommon. Well, one of the reasons why I like Norova Estates is that it has a little bit more yard size than what you might usually find for the size house that you're getting at the $375, $425 price range. These houses are just separated enough to where it feels like you just get more yard, and you do. In addition to that, the backyards are pretty large as well in a lot of cases. So you get an extra little bit of yard. The separation between you and your neighbors is great. In addition to that, they're brick houses. There are a lot of these, you can see that they are one story. A lot of them are ranches. There are some that aren't, but most of them are going to be ranch style. Now, that's not always a positive for some people, but the idea here is that you're getting an option to have a smaller house, in a lower price range, or some of these are larger, but you're still not paying too terribly much. Again, $360, $370, upward to $425, $450. That's hard to find, and also in a very accessible point in an area in Chesapeake. Now, these houses are built mostly in the 60s, and what you'll find is that some of these, a lot of them, as they were built originally, had compartmentalized rooms, and they weren't super wide open floor plans. So people over time have started to change those configurations and knock down some walls. So you'll find a mixture of compartmentalized room floor plans and also wide open floor plans for people that have totally changed what's inside the house. So it depends on what you're looking for. It might give you more options to choose from in this neighborhood. Now, zooming out into the neighborhood, you'll notice again that as you come out of here, Greenbrier is a very big and important part of Chesapeake, and being close to there is very important and helpful if you live in Norova Estates. And so as you just come out of your neighborhood on Greenbrier Parkway, you've got big box stores, you've got a lot of restaurants, you've got accessibility to the interstates. Interstate 64 takes you towards even towards western part of Chesapeake, towards Norfolk, even up 664 up into the peninsula, and also the other side of the horseshoe that takes you towards Virginia Beach. You're like 15 minutes away, 17 minutes away from the center of Virginia Beach. Another big, it's a very convenient thing to be close to. So while these houses don't have everything, for the price, it's hard to find everything for the price. So I like the neighborhood quality, the comfort, the fact that the only people that drive through Norova Estates are often the ones that live there and know that it's there. Otherwise, this is very relaxed, but also very close to lots of things. And also, you've got a very well-built house, brick style house that is hard to find in a more newer style house. Now there are some drawbacks to Norova Estates. Number one is, I mentioned this in other videos and other similar types of neighborhoods, that you have old style house problems because they're built in the 60s. Cast iron piping, waste lines that go to the streets, those are often cast iron and galvanized pipe, which might break down. You might need to replace those over time. Can be $10,000+ if you find that you need to replace it while you live there. And number two is you got things like electrical panels that might need to be redone over time. Older style house problems. Another thing that you can find too is that with windows, garage doors, and any sort of like access point outside with these types of brick houses, you'll find that you'll see lines across the tops of like these openings, right? These have what are called lintels over these windows, doors, garage doors. Well, these lintels are metal and they can expand and contract with moisture that comes in to these areas, and as they open and expand and contrast, they can create larger holes around these lintels. So if you don't fix these areas up, you can start seeing more moisture get into these sections if you don't do anything about it. So that's another old house problem you'll find, that not just with houses in Norova Estates, but others in other parts of Hampton Roads and Chesapeake that are built in the same time period. Very common thing to run into. So things like that you might need to do as you're living in a house, or look at or address as you get in a house, are things that you might not think about before you buy a house built in the 60s or 50s or prior to that, that can add to the ongoing cost of living in a house like this. So it's one of the drawbacks of being in Norova Estates, but at the same time, a lot of big pluses as well. So that leads me to a neighborhood just down the street from Norova Estates. Is another cool one that is a different price range, totally different kind of house. Very cool. Wedgewood Estates. This neighborhood, if you look at the map, you'll see this is Norova. Just headed north of there is a street called Fairway Drive. Well, this street is where Wedgewood Estates is. It connects to Volvo Parkway on the north side, close to Greenbrier Country Club, and also on the south-ish side on Greenbrier Parkway, you can connect to both sides. This neighborhood has totally different styles of houses in it. 4 or 5 bedrooms, 3,000-ish plus square feet. Totally different vibe than what you'll find in Norova Estates. I love this neighborhood because you can get houses in here in the $550, $650 price range. And for the price and for the size, that's a lot of house, right? And so you get cool things like some of these houses are on the golf course, on Greenbrier Country Club. Very nice golf course. Some, if you don't want a golf course style backyard, that's okay too, because you can live off the golf course as well. And so that's one thing. Number two is you do have access to the same types of things you'll find that Norova Estates has in Greenbrier. So you're very close to lots of stuff, and you can get to Virginia Beach very easily. And so I think that's a big positive. These are also built in the late 80s, early 90s, and so different style floor plans that you'll find compared to Norova, but more contemporary, and not no cast iron pipes as much to deal with. Now there are different things you need to focus on. One is you might find some polybutylene pipes, Quest pipes plumbing that you might find in some of these houses. However, again, houses built in the 80s and 90s may have this, but depending on the type of Quest piping, it might not matter. There are phases of Quest piping, and talk to your inspector and people in the know in plumbing about this so you can figure out how important this is. But that's one drawback, is you've got this potential for Quest and polybutylene piping. However, if you want a larger size house, 4 or 5 plus bedrooms, and you want more contemporary and you want close to Greenbrier, there aren't too many options to me that are better than Wedgewood Estates. In addition to that, all the Greenbrier stuff is great, but you're also close to the other side of Greenbrier, which is also very close to Summit Point, which is a new development, which not just Wedgewood, but Norova has access close to here as well. But I did a video about Summit Point, kind of a new earth style of kind of a walkable, stores or restaurants all through some apartment style areas next to the Dollar Tree headquarters, which I think will help add to an extra layer of style and functionality and accessibility in this area in Greenbrier that just originally was not here. And so as Greenbrier gets built up again, because this was a 90s type of area, as the big boxes get revitalized, the Greenbrier Mall gets revitalized, and Summit Point gets built up even more, you're going to find a lot more stuff to do and new stuff to do around Greenbrier, and being close to there is very, very important, I think, for value purposes too. Now, the school districts in both Wedgewood Estates and Norova are Indian River School District, which depending on what you're looking for school-wise might not be what you're looking for, and so that's part of why the prices are where they are. It's not Hickory, it's not Grassfield. So that leads me over to the number 3 neighborhood in Chesapeake, which is, if you zoom out further, going further south, you'll go into more of the traditional, like Chesapeake, Great Bridge, like country part of Chesapeake that just feels different than what maybe like Greenbrier does. As you go further south, you'll find that. And Battlefield Boulevard, Johnstown Road, as you go further further south, it just feels more and more country. And that's why I want to focus on one neighborhood that is called Forest Lakes, which is down in the south corner of Great Bridge into the Grassfield School District. And if you notice, Johnstown Road, Battlefield Boulevard, Cedar Road, these are all the primary, like those country style roads that are the primary access points to lots of the rest of Chesapeake that have a lot of stores on them, and it's where you'll get most of your grocery stuff done. But it still feels country. As you get away from those main roads, it just feels like you're out in the middle of nowhere, but you're not actually that far away. Well, Forest Lakes is one of those neighborhoods that's in that country part of Chesapeake that feels kind of tucked in the corner. Well, I like Forest Lakes. One of the reasons because it has very unique styles of houses, traditional, but also some contemporary, and a lot of brick that makes it feel more kind of regal. It's a nice neighborhood. So these are in the 6s and in the low 7s price range mostly. And so to get what you have here, like 3,000, sometimes 4,000 square feet for this price range, it's hard to find that combo in the style of house that it's in, and also being in Grassfield School District. So those are all big pluses combined. And then as you zoom out, you'll notice too, you see Forest Lakes, there are lakes around here, and there are a bunch of houses that surround these lakes. So having some that have some water like access in your backyard is pretty cool too. And these were built in the 80s into the 90s, and so this is the same type of what you'll find in Wedgewood Estates is what you'll find here, is that similar style houses, similar style floor plans, but because these are larger houses in some cases, and also a bit more on the kind of sophisticated side, you might find a bit more of that elegance as you walk into the houses that you might not find in other places in Chesapeake. So these houses, again, they have a larger flow, like for example, you got the kitchen, some that fall into a large family room right next to each other, so the flow of that back living space can often feel very comfortable. So as you get into the 80s and 90s, that's what is more common. With the bigger houses, you have bigger rooms, right? So some of these also have some decent sized yard, like this stretched out yard, but not all of them. Some of them aren't super deep, and so you have a bigger house with a little bit smaller yard. That's one of the drawbacks, I'd say, to being in Forest Lakes, is that proportion of size house in yard in some of these houses. But I like the style a lot. You got a lot of really nice trees. The forest type of vibe is pretty thick here in Forest Lakes, which is why they call it that. So not too fancy, foresty, and also lakes. So shocker, it's called Forest Lakes. Now, as you come out of the neighborhood, though, you're getting back into the heart of Great Bridge, back into the heart of like Battlefield Boulevard, Cedar Road, and it just feels like a small town part of Chesapeake. And that's what it is. It's when you think about Chesapeake, this is often what people think about, is this type of vibe. So you're like 8-10 minutes away from a lot of these parts of town. However, one of the drawbacks to being in Forest Lakes is that you are further away from the rest of Chesapeake and Virginia Beach and Hampton Roads. So if you come out of the neighborhood, out of Forest Lakes, it's going to take you like 10 minutes to get to most of the rest of Chesapeake to start, like to those main roads. So the bypass going towards the interstate, it can take you 20 plus minutes. And so getting even towards Virginia Beach and towards the ocean front, that can be 35 plus minutes to get over there. So there are ways and multiple ways to get to Chesapeake and to get to Virginia Beach and the rest of Chesapeake, but they're not super easy to get to. So I would say that's a bigger drawback to living in Forest Lakes. But you see, you have the benefit of the size house for the price, 6s and 7s, but not necessarily the accessibility to the rest of town. Now, that being said, going further east away from Forest Lakes, you'll see Johnstown Road, you'll see Battlefield Boulevard, you'll see Mount Pleasant Road. Then going further south from there, you'll see Etheridge Manor Boulevard. Well, this is an important part of town. I grew up, like a lot of my friends lived in and around this area, and this is what I call the Etheridges. There are a lot of neighborhoods that have the same road. Etheridge, well, the word Etheridge in it. Etheridge Manor, Etheridge Lakes, Etheridge Point, Lakes of Etheridge, Etheridge Pines. So many neighborhoods that are in the Etheridge area that have different Etheridge types of names in them. Now, they have different styles of houses in here as well, and it's around, kind of like a horseshoe around the north side of Etheridge Manor Boulevard, over towards Fentress Loop, and kind of closer to the Centerville Turnpike side. All this over here are all the different Etheridges. And so that you start seeing them in like the mid 80s. That's where like Etheridge Woods, Etheridge Manor, in the late 80s, early 90s, that's where you see some of these being built. But then Etheridge Lakes, Etheridge Point, some of these are built over in the mid 90s, late 90s, even in the early 2000s, and you'll see different styles of houses in there too. But the prices will often go up as well. So for example, Etheridge Manor, Etheridge Woods, these are anywhere from like the upper threes, low 400s sometimes, and going into the 450, 500, 550, and 6 price range. But as you get into newer houses that are like 2,500 square feet, 3,000 square feet, 3,500 square feet, now you're talking 550 to 7. Nothing too much above that, which is one of the benefits of being in this area. Now, you'll find, again, with these sizes and styles of houses, they're built in the 80s, so you'll find a lot of the same style floor plans. So a lot more ranches in the earlier time periods, a lot more ranches in those smaller style houses, 15 to 2,000 square feet. But again, you can get a nice house in the Hickory School District for like the 375 to 440 price range, which is extremely hard. If you want like under 4, you're going to probably be going under 1,500 square feet. But if you want to be in the school district, that's what you got to do. And so at the 3-bedroom house, you might be able to find what you want in the 425 price range. That's extremely hard and it's super valuable, and it's very easy to sell these houses a lot of times because you're in the school district. The demand is pretty high. Now it's a mishmash of a bunch of random roads, and so it's not super easy to get out of by heart until you start living in the area for a while. You kind of just mosey on around. So, that's just classic Chesapeake, classic Great Bridge in Hickory area feel. Now, as you go further to the east side, like so, for example, Etheridge Lakes, this is where you get into the higher price range, and you get some lakes over here, and closer to Fentress Loop, they're going to be 600 and up in a lot of cases. Now, sometimes even in like the 550-ish, 575 range, that can still often happen too. But as you go on the eastern side, this is a bigger drawback to living in the Etheridge area, is that you are closer to Fentress Airfield. Fentress Airfield is just across the way as the crow flies, and on the eastern side of this section in Etheridge, the flight patterns are going to be closer to where you live, and so you can start hearing jets again on the eastern side of this area specifically, or especially on the eastern side of this area. So in general, you'll start hearing a little bit of it, but as you get further east, you'll hear more of it. So just because you're away from the Oceana Naval Air Station in Virginia Beach does not mean you are totally avoiding all the jets. Check the ACU's jet noise zone map to see where those spots are that you might need to be aware of. Definitely do some research to make sure you're comfortable with what's around the Etheridge area. As far as accessibility goes, you do have a couple of grocery stores that are pretty close to you off of Etheridge Manor Boulevard. And so getting onto the Great Bridge bypass will get you to more access over towards like Edinburgh, further south. You're like 10 minutes away from there. And then further north, you're going into Greenbrier. You're like 12, 15 minutes away from Greenbrier in a lot of cases too. So you can get to Virginia Beach, the center of Virginia Beach, in 20 to 25 minutes. So it's not super far away. But again, it's not ideal like compared to like if you live in Greenbrier, you're right close to Virginia Beach. It's not that close, but it's still pretty convenient because you're close to major access roads that get you to a lot of different places. So that leads me to my number one neighborhood in all of Chesapeake for 2024 is an often overlooked part of town that is called the Preserve, right off of Great Bridge Boulevard. You look at the map here. This is back to the Great Bridge bypass, Route 168. Further south from there is Great Bridge Boulevard. Well, I've talked about Riverwalk in the past, like real nice big neighborhood, 90s style houses. But just before you get there, just on the same side of the street is a neighborhood called the Preserve, which has much more unique houses, like the more like older style houses, but newer floor plans, newer condition houses. So as you drive in off of the main road of Great Bridge Boulevard, you'll notice that it's like a planned subdivision, but a lot of unique style houses and older, old-fashioned style houses, larger porches, wraparound porches, columns, thick columns, lots of trim, things that you might find in like houses built in the 30s that you can get newer style houses in that is hard to find. It's hard to find this style or these styles that also are pretty new, right? And so I like that a lot. Now, some of these houses are going to be anywhere from starting in the mid fives, upwards into the 7-ish, 750 price range. Because also the sizes of the houses are going to be mostly anywhere from like the 2,500 square foot range up into the 3,000 to 4,000 square foot range. And some of these even have detached like multiple car garages, but then a mother-in-law suite on the above that garage. So some of these are really big, and so you can get a house like through 750, 760, 770. But those big, like if you want a lot of space, this is a pretty good option for that price range, because it's hard to find that, and again, all the new-ishness that you can find in these types of houses. So I love that too. It's an HOA neighborhood as well. So you've got a pool, like rec center area in the back, and behind there is also a trail that takes you out to the water. So if you zoom out of the map, on the map, you'll see the Intercoastal Waterway on the Elizabeth River. Now, a couple of drawbacks to being in the preserve. One is going to be that the yard sizes in some of the cases aren't very big, especially as you get closer to the middle of the neighborhood. There are some that are kind of small relative to what you think you might want for the size of the house, but you've got community areas maybe behind you that makes it feel even bigger. But my point is that there are some spots that will just feel like the yard sizes aren't as big as you might want them to be, and it's part of what keeps the prices a little bit lower. But the style of house and the flow of the neighborhood feels very, very meticulous, maintained very well. And so if you want the HOA vibe, but the older style house, there are very few places that have this style of house in it that also aren't very old. So I'm a big fan of the neighborhood for that reason as well. Now, another thing is the Oscar Smith High School district. So it's very close to Oscar Smith, but now some people might want Hickory or Grassfield. And so this part of the pricing is influenced by the school district that it's in. So just do your research on school district to determine, make sure this is the spot you want to be for school districts. Now, if you come out of the neighborhood, Great Bridge Boulevard, it's kind of an old street. And so you'll find there are parts that are developed or new. Some are just kind of feel kind of old. So you get a mishmash of what's around Great Bridge Boulevard, and the shopping areas are also pretty old. Like there's a food line, but it haven't really been updated very much, right? Very close to the preserve. But the thing about it is that you're near a lot of things. You can get to Interstate 64, the bypass, pretty easily. You're like 5 minutes away, 6-7 minutes away from a lot of interstate access points. So you're actually not that far away from Virginia Beach. So even though you're not necessarily closest to a lot of the things you might want to be closest to, you're not necessarily that far away, because you're close to so many major roads. You can get to a lot of places very quickly. You're also close to Battlefield Boulevard, which has a ton of shopping, a ton of stuff that is on the western side of Greenbrier. So coming out of the neighborhood, take Great Bridge Boulevard, and you're not that far from Battlefield. You're close to the bypass. You're close to a lot of stuff is what I'm saying, even though you're not necessarily the closest to all those things. So if you have any more questions about relocating to Chesapeake or anywhere in Hampton Roads from Virginia Beach through Williamsburg, let me know. That's what I do. I love helping people relocate to this area. So if you have any questions, drop a comment, send me a call, email, text, and I'll do whatever I can to help you relocate to the area. And I will see you on the next video.